Alice, welcome.
Thanks
How
so
are
much. Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Good. It's lovely to have you. We've struggled to get this in, isn't it? I think it's fair to say you're so busy, and then I was crap at one point or another. So I feel like we've been trying to have this conversation for so long. In fact, Mad Up North last year is when we first broached the idea.
Almost
and
annualising.
It's nearly there again. So that's shameful. I'm sorry for my behaviour in that regard, but it's good to get you on. So retail media has been a topic that we've spoken about a lot on the podcast, and it's super exciting. And I'm genuinely, if I didn't have this job, I'd probably be looking at what I could be doing in retail media, because I think it's so exciting as a sort of a marketing concept. But Dean Harris, who has been on the podcast twice now, from Co-op, runs the retail media network at Co-op. He asked a question on the podcast probably a year ago as well now. He said, with retail media, what's the most important word? Is it retail or is it media? So what's your take on that?
I love Dean always asking the difficult question, shall we say. I think it's really difficult because actually the words can't coexist without each other. And the reason I say that is that retail media, everything starts with the customer and all of the insight that we get. And that is from the retail perspective. And then when the customer is engaging with us, we want it to be engaged. We want it to be exciting. And that is the media bit. So Dean, complete cop out. You can catch me at the next conference and tell me off. But I think they're both equally as important for me. Yeah.
I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but obviously I've been in media for 30 years. But when I see advertising in the aisle, I don't really think about it as advertising. It kind of feels like signage to me. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not even sure it's like, it might just be sample size of one and I might just be weird, but I'm not sure that people actually see it as advertising as much as, because it's along with the pricing and it's almost signage, like, oh, the Chocky biscuits are this way, giving away my shopping habits there. But it's an interesting one. So in terms of like retail media networks, I've heard some people in the media industry talk about them as just another walled garden. So I guess there's an element of that, but also an element of not. I just wonder what your thoughts were on whether you are a walled garden, you're not a walled garden.
I think, that fundamentally comes from the fact that all of the data that retailers sit on is really worth its weight in gold, right? And so I think that's where the perception of a walled garden comes from, because we're both protective of the data and we have to be, right? Because customers have trusted us with that and therefore we have to do the right thing with it. I think things become walled gardens when you're not transparent and when you're not sharing and when there's not that, that kind of fluidity of information there, which I don't think we do, because actually within retail media, we are increasingly trying to improve our own standards, be better at measurement, be better at kind of reporting out there. And then when you've got all of the different channels that we work with, and that's the interesting thing about retail media is, for me, actually, it's a layer that sits under loads of different media touch points. We have to interact with traditional walled gardens in order to be able to play. So for me, retail media is actually a bridge that connects the data with the channels that we activate with, as opposed to it being kind of its own separate walled garden, I would say.
Okay. And just out of interest, like obviously you said that the data there is gold, and I 100% agree with that. Is your data made available to people outside of your own platform to do their own DSP work, or is Pollen, right, your platform?
Correct,
yeah. So is it the only way you access it is through Pollen and then buy through there, or can you take it into the trade desk or somewhere else?
Yeah, so at Nectar 360, we've got really kind of a strategy of building our own IP, building our own products. And that is where Pollen has come about, so our unified retail media platform. And that is our single front entry, if you like, to all of our media channels and the access to the data and then ultimately the measurement that sits at the side of it. We have a growing offsite proposition. So I've been looking after offsite now for around 5 years. And most channels, so if you think kind of Meta, YouTube, etc., you do need to come through us to access. However, within the CTV space, actually, the technology is not quite there, shall we say, for everything to be integrated in one place. So, for example, through Channel 4 and Sky, you would talk to their sales team, and then we would have kind of a secure data sharing relationship with them so that we can kind of target and report back. So slightly hybrid. We would love to have everything in the one place. We just need the technology to catch up a little bit.
Fair enough. You mentioned earlier about everything starts with retail media, everything starts with a shopper. So how do you balance, like, you have a number, right? And you're a commercial entity, but then you've also got to sort of balance that with the shopper experience. If every brand you stocked in store wanted to do advertising, it would be awful, I would imagine. Like, everyone at the same time, you wouldn't better see anything. I always liken it to trying to drive in America. I don't know if you've ever tried to drive down, and there's so much advertising that I couldn't see. I was looking for a road sign, and I was just like, it's just like awful. It's like sensory overload. So how do you balance the needs of the shopper with the imperative to make money?
For me, for us, actually, if you are adding frustration into a shopper journey, as it sounds like that driving trip was pretty frustrating for you, then ultimately the media that you're putting out there doesn't return and the revenue doesn't come off the back of it. So actually focusing on the shopper is the primary objective, and making sure that it is the right message at the right time to meet their needs. The revenue flows off the back of it. So we would always start with the customer, and the customer has to be at the heart of all the decisions. And then revenue is a nice kind of secondary outcome to that.
So any friction? I remember like working in advertising in a newspaper, and editorial and advertising used to fight every now and again about how much advertising we wanted in because we were trying to hit a budget and stuff. Is there ever any friction, or is it very 100% shopper first, and then you can just do what you can do as long as the shopper's looked after, or to the commercial side and in this example, so editorial side, or whoever looks after the customer experience? Is there ever any sort of conversations where you try and push it a little bit, or not really?
There should be a healthy tension, right? And, one of the bits that I love, but probably frustrates me to equal measures about retail media, is the amount of stakeholders that you have within an organisation. Particularly Nectar 360, we're embedded within the Sainsbury's group. We have Sainsbury's and Argos, and lots of stakeholders within that mix. So there does have to be that healthy tension there. I think for us, everything comes back to the data and what is the reason that we're making that decision. We've actually made a lot of brave decisions over the years where we've stopped selling media touch points because actually they were just revenue driving for us, and maybe not as additive to the shopper experience, but also not additive to the brand, right? Because if the brand is also not seeing those returns from the media and the investment with us, then that's going to erode the trust in what we do, erode the customer trust. It really is kind of a virtuous circle or flywheel. So yes, there is that tension, but we do make the brave decisions to turn things off when we know that they're not additive to that customer experience. And also some things just take a little bit longer because we want to get it right. So I took on responsibility for the in-store screen network probably around kind of 12 months ago. And actually a lot of the conversation that we were having there was, well, how do we make sure that we're not getting in customers' way? Also, we're a retailer. We've got to get products on shelves. How are we making sure that we're not putting screens where we need to replan products from? So there's always that kind of network of conversations that happen. But I would say generally, I think we get it right.
Okay, cool. I think when a lot of people think about retail media, what they're actually thinking about is shopper marketing, right? They're thinking about in-aisle, in-store, and that's obviously a massive part of it. It's where it started, and it's super important. But you mentioned the golden data that you have that can basically power what Nick at Tesco calls sofa to store, Dom at Tap calls first mile, last mile. You probably got a different way of talking about it, but basically sort of linking the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel to the same audience, using the same data, and perhaps building brand awareness and consideration on CTV, out of home, whatever it might be, before people actually get in the aisle. So is that still a future dream, or is that happening today, and to what extent? It's
definitely happening today. I think it's growing more and more as well. I think there's a couple of different angles to it. As people really recognize the value of stores, let's be honest, we've got millions of shoppers going into our stores every single day across the country. There's that blurring of digital out of home with in-store screen networks. And actually, when you think of digital out of home, it is a brand building exercise. So why is that considerably different within a shopping environment? It shouldn't be, right? There's definitely that brand building element of it as well. And then when you think more traditional kind of brand building channels, so stuff like CTV, YouTube, etc., the great thing about retail media is that as budgets are squeezed, because let's be honest, there's not more money from the money tree coming in, then we can make sure that we're targeting the right consumer with your brand, so you are getting less wastage from your media spend. So a lot of brands are really turning onto that and also the media agencies to say, actually, I can create a lot more efficiency from here and still hit my KPIs, still drive the awareness. And then you have that golden piece at the bottom where actually we can tell you how it performs. We do a lot of brand uplift studies as well. So that's definitely part of our traditional toolkit, whereas previously, in a shopper marketing world, it would all be about sales uplift. Now we can tell you actually what is the recall of your brand as well. So brands will come to us knowing that we can offer that kind of full toolkit that they need in order to inspire that customer all the way down to convert them.
Cool. Okay. And another thing, interesting point, which I think Nick at Tesco raised, which got me thinking, is sort of in aisle, in store, is traditionally thought about as direct response. It's like the last step in a customer's journey. Can you get them to buy your brand rather than another one? But is there any reason why that can't also be brand advertising? Because I think about, I don't actually eat breakfast, so this is a bad example, but if I was to eat Kellogg's cornflakes, the two times I'm most likely to think about Kellogg's cornflakes is when I'm eating them and when I'm shopping for them, right? So if I'm thinking about cereal in the cereal aisle and I see bran flakes, let's say, for argument's sake, I might not buy them now and then, but it might plant the seed for the next journey or the next shopper journey or the next shopper journey. So do you see it as direct response 100%, or is it a mixture of the two? And how do marketers see it?
We would definitely see it as a blend of the two, right? Because exactly as you said, I don't eat breakfast normally either. But if I was to see that and make a life choice a couple of weeks down the line, I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe Kellogg's. And there would be that kind of subconscious influence there as well. And then you've got to think about kind of bigger ticket items. Obviously, from an Argos perspective, we have screens within our Argos stores. Now, that could be telling you that the new iPhone is launching in X amount of time. Now, those more kind of considered purchases, you're not going to see, a screen within a store and go, okay, I'm going to spend £2,000 on an iPhone. But next time when you're coming to upgrade your phone, you will think, oh, but I think Argos can do that. Maybe I'll have a look there and see what the range is and then the delivery proposition, et cetera, et cetera. So it definitely is much more of a blend than I think it ever has been. I think the other piece to think about that as well, and we're very early in this journey, but I know that the guys and Christian at Reveille in Germany does a lot within non-endemic within the store estate. And actually, how can you put relevant brands throughout that store that inspires that customer to think broader? One of the examples that we've kind of thought through is actually, would it be relevant to serve a Sky or a Netflix advertisement next to the popcorn aisle? Actually, probably it would be, because you're picking up your popcorn or your snacks for your Friday night in. You've seen that Sky have got, I don't know, the new film that's coming, Wuthering Heights, whatever, that I can buy from my sofa at home. I'm probably going to make that connection. So I think there's definitely a brand piece within non-endemic as well that is probably undertapped at the moment in the UK from an in-store awareness point of view. Yeah,
interesting. The non-endemic thing is going back to is it retail or is it media? That's like media, right? That is, you're supplying a media audience. It's less about the retail, although you're maybe supplying the context.
Exactly, it's the customer cues, right? Yeah. When we think about non-endemic and everything that we want to do within that space, it's what is that customer cue that they have given us, and how can we make that experience for them additive, so that there is that value exchange in return for the data that they've kind of trusted us with. So in that popcorn example, it probably wouldn't be an advert for Volkswagen, for example, because there's not a natural connection there.
Yeah, unless they pay a lot.
No. Or unless they start putting cinemas in the back of their cars, but who knows?
Never say never. So for certain brands, so like FMCG, we mentioned Kellogg's or Heinz or companies like that, do you think we're moving towards a world where eventually the retail media data will be the glue that unifies everything that they do from a media perspective? So when the technology catches up and you're able to come to Pollen and buy any media that you want using a Nectar 360 data, do you think that will be the direction of travel, just because of the ability to link the top and the bottom of the funnel to get the attribution at the end to see how sales went up? Do you think we'll go that way, or do you still think it'll be a line item on media plans?
It's definitely becoming more than a line item, right? And when we start to look at media plans, and particularly working with media agencies, it's much more around the glue that holds everything together. And actually, how can we get that insight that influences the media that we then put on the plan, because we understand how that customer is feeling in that moment, what influences influences them to be able to convert, because that's what media is, right? You're trying to make someone make an action off the back of it. And retail FMCG, that's the easiest way to be able to do it. So it's definitely changing, I would say. Do I think, and, IAB have some bold statements that all media will be retail media? I think it's interesting, but, that there is still a place for traditional TV within the plan. Amazon do some really cool things in terms of that direct conversion. I think we'll see more of that. So I think we'll see retail media creeping in there. But then you just have to look at the Super Bowl and the amount of money that is spent on Super Bowl advertising. There will always be that role for those big kind of above the line campaigns that, I'd love them to all be retail media, but I don't think that's going to be the reality.
Fair enough. When we spoke last week, you mentioned the connected store. And you mentioned earlier that you've taken responsibility for the screens in store. So could you talk about what the connected store is and how that works from a sort of media marketing point of view?
Yeah, so the connected store vision for us is all around actually how do we bring some of the best principles that we've developed through traditional digital retail media, so on-site, off-site, into that store environment. So it's how do we connect together the screens that we have, the apps that customers have in their pockets, and also kind of, smart shop handsets where customers are scanning their products as they go around. How can we infuse the data cues that we've got to make everyone's shopping experience more relevant for them and also more inspiring for them as they go around it? So the connected store vision for us is really how does the data then power the store experiences that we can measure against and bring our best practice into that environment. Okay.
Can you give us like an example of how that might all come together for a brand? So how they might use that connected store?
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of work kind of testing out the individual touch points and we've been really lucky that we connected everything together on a single content management system. So now we can get all of the touch points to talk to one another and therefore measure it. So that could be as simple as a customer coming into store, picking up their handset and seeing that we've got a new limited edition flavour of Coca-Cola. I'm going to use that because it's an easy one. They seem to always have a limited edition. Yeah. So they see that at the start of their journey, and then they on their handset, they start going around the store. They get to the power aisle, so the centre aisle. We use a lot of retail terms,
What's
shall we
called?
say? The power aisle.
Power
so that's the centre within the store, so where you've got the aisles running off the side. Yeah. We have a big screen at the end, which we call our end of power aisle screen. Inventive, I know.
You came up with that name.
Yeah. And they can see there again that Coke have put some advertising up there that says, new limited edition flavour. They're doing their shopping. They've had 2 queues now, so it's in the back of their mind. They're a Coke drinker. We know that because they've scanned their Nectar Point card at the beginning of the journey. They then get to the soft drinks aisle, and we have a centre aisle lead-in screen. Again, another inventive naming there, where they see the Coke. They can then go to the fixturization directly next to it, pick it up, put it in their basket, and when they check out, we can kind of see that they've checked out and then provide that measurement. So for us, it's about placing the right cues at the right point in that journey so that a customer can either be inspired to try something new, increase their loyalty with a particular brand, try a new flavour, or be retained, into that brand.
What's really interesting to me, so that sounds brilliant. That already a brilliant opportunity for a brand to be able to kind of nudge. I would call it nudge. You call it cue, right? Same thing. But what's super interesting for the future is if Coke could say, right, we're going to reach 1 million people with a brand campaign, and we won't do that million people. And then those 2 million people are going to go into Sainsbury's, and then we're going to do that journey, and we're going to see how the journey changes. And if the group that saw the brand ad respond to those cues so much more, then that's a big tick for why brand is important. It helps to sort of ask for more investment. I mean, I don't suppose Coke need to ask for brand investment. That's pretty much all they do, isn't it? A lot of what they do. But you get my point. It's like you can say, okay, well, a brand campaign plus in-store cues equals this many sales. Yes. No brand campaign plus in-store cues is this. And so the difference means that the branding was worth it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And omnichannel campaigns are a key part of what we plan for. So actually, how can we do all of that that piece through from the awareness directly down to the conversion. So that would be how we would help to execute in that example. I think the other interesting thing is we're increasingly being asked by brands to feed our data into MMMs and their studies there. So actually they can compare a like for like across all of the touch points. So we're already starting to see those little cues come up where brands are going, wait a minute, there may be a different way of doing this. And as I said before in your answer to your question around that brand building, I think it's just a time for it to get momentum.
Are you able to kind of feed back to a brand, okay, we fed this cohort of shoppers 4 cues, let's say, for argument's sake, this 3, this 2, this 1, and this is the difference in sales, so people can start to see how the frequency of messaging kind of impact sales. Is that something you can do today already?
Yeah, so frequency capping and being able to test out different messages, different levels of messages is something that we do. We do a lot of modeling as well within there. So how do we find lookalike customers and how do we need to treat them differently to customers that are directly purchasing your product as of today? So it's
conquesting as well. So if Pepsi wanted to go after the Coke audience and that the Coke users because they've scanned their nectar, could Pepsi go, oh, we want them, we want to nudge them, or
Technically, yes. We would always come back to the data and say, is that the smartest use of that? Is it better to look at actually your previous Pepsi customers that have lapsed and therefore go after them and understand why that is? Is it more important to look at the cues of what is the type of customer that is likely to buy Pepsi, that is not buying Pepsi today, versus that direct, well, you're a Coke customer, so you must be a Pepsi customer. That's a bit binary. I think we can do a little bit more within the retail media space to think differently. I, for example, am a Diet Coke drinker. I don't particularly like Pepsi. Sorry, Pepsi. So I think if we did that, it's like saying like all people that like yoga are exactly the same, right? And we can do that. The richness of the data that we have in retail media means we can understand more about them, and therefore we can look at more interesting targeting strategies.
Cool. Makes sense. So AI, we can't have a podcast and not talk about AI. It's not allowed. So how is AI today integrated into your retail media network? How is it helping to sort of accelerate, whether it be profitability, whether it be shopper journey? Just quite a broad question. I know.
Yeah, no,
how
that's
are you using
fine.
AI to?
So AI is definitely embedded into Pollen, the platform that we've recently built. And I've talked about this before. We set out to build Pollen with the idea of Pollen around kind of 18 months, 2 years ago. AI was not even a twinkle in our plan at that point in time. And as you said, like if we'd have launched a platform today with no AI in it, we'd probably get laughed out of the room. And also we wouldn't win on buzzword bingo, which is, let's be honest, what we're all trying to do. So AI for us is seen as really that turbo power that is added to the engine. So the engine remains the same. AI is the piece that kind of takes it to the next level. And what that looks like in Pollen for us is, an LLM that allows you to have a natural conversation with the tool to build audiences. So audience building, getting to that nub of what we've kind of been talking about is really complicated, particularly when you're talking about 24 million shoppers, billions and billions of row of data. It's a very complex thing. Whereas what we've used AI to do is really democratize that and mean that more people across the industry can get to the nub of what they're trying to solve through a conversational flow. So we definitely see in terms of audience building and media planning, it's a key part. The second piece that we've looked at is how does it remove frustration within the planning journey of getting a campaign live. So creative within retail media, because we have the brand standards of Sainsbury's, we have the brand standards of Nectar, we have the brand standards from the brand to apply through. Every single piece of creative has around 140 different things that we look for. So it's crazy. And up until now, we've been doing that with humans. And let's be honest, it's not the favorite part of their job. It's not what they wake up wanting to do in the morning. So we've built a tool which allows you to run the creative through it. And within 90 seconds, it can give you a view of, is that creative compliant? And if it's not, what's not compliant? So are your terms and conditions too small? Is the Pantone of this logo off? So that has saved us loads of time and we've had amazing feedback.
Is that 100% accurate?
95%.
95, yeah.
which,
Takes a lot of the
that's
heavy
better than
lifting out.
humans, I would say. I'm definitely not 95% accurate all of the time. And then we also started to accelerate that through actually a tool which looks at the creative and tells you, based on all of the backbone of all the knowledge and the insight and the reporting that we've got, is your creative going to work? Is it going to be performant? And it gives you a scale on what do we think the creative effectiveness is going to be and how could you again improve that. So again, a massive benefit. And we ran an event actually recently, and the guys from WPP were on the stage, and they said for them, that's amazing, right? Because that gives them real-time insight into what's going to work within our environment for the creative and how can they change it. So there's lots of things there. We've got lots of plans coming up in terms of how we want to continue to accelerate AI, but we absolutely do not see it replacing people within our organization. There is a role that humans can play that computers can't, in my opinion. But it is really about how do we give them the tools and, as I said, that turbocharge to their engine in order to be able to do better and more.
Okay. You mentioned real time there in terms of the creative, but that's just sparked off a whole new sort of set of questions. So with a retail media campaign, like an in-store retail media campaign, is that all optimized in real time as well? So like there's a dashboard somewhere where people can see how it's performing at the checkouts and then optimize accordingly?
I won't lie. No, not at this point in time. That is absolutely the ambition. We are very early in our screen journey. So we started rolling out screens in store only over the last 12 months. So measurement is a key part of what we are looking to unlock. Yes, we can give you volume of impressions, etc. Everything we do at the moment is a post-campaign control versus exposed methodology. So you do get that reporting to understand how it worked. It's not in real time yet, but we have the ambition for the future to get it there. I also, given kind of my background in digital and my passion for digital, would love it to be programmatically served as well. There's definitely a world where you're getting the weather signals in big sporting events nearby and you're able to kind of change that creative up more frequently. But as I said, we were at the start of the runway. We've got a little way to go before we land.
Bit of a weather geek, actually. I used to work at the Weather Channel, and I still remember the interview so clearly. It was up at not far from here in Tottenham Court Road with Ross Webster, who was my boss at the time. I came in to run mobile advertising at the Weather Channel, and he was telling me about how supermarkets change the store layout every day based on the weather, and it just blew my mind. It's just the number of products that are affected by the weather. The obvious ones, burgers, the examples you always give, oh, it's burgers because it's sunny. Yeah, but almost every product line has some sort of it's influenced by the weather in some way, shape or form, right?
It absolutely is. I actually started my career at Amazon. I was a buyer there and in the sports and outdoor category. The amount of conversations we had about snow shovels were extensive, which just goes to show, weather literally, it does influence so much. And being able to respond to those real-time cues, I think is super important as we move forward.
Yeah, for sure. So time to get your crystal ball out.
Yes.
If we manage to get this in again for next year, what's going to have changed?
We should book it in now.
Yeah, should we book it now? Yeah. What's your calendar looking like February 2027? So what's going to change over the next 12 months? What do you think? And then maybe the next 5 years, what do you see coming down the line in retail media? So
I think definitely within the next 12 months, we will see a lot more focus on transparency and standards and measurement, which is rightly so. We've been kind of talking about this for quite a while now. We'd love to get it over the line, make sure that everyone is abiding to the same standards, because actually that for me is where our industry grows up, right? That's where we can firmly stand next to the programmatic boys, etc., and say that we can accurately measure and we can give you a set of measurement that you believe in. So I think that's the key thing for me. I think we'll definitely see much more of an emphasis placed on that brand and creative lens that retail media can bring you. So really moving truly from that bottom of the funnel into that kind of brand building piece that we all know retail media has the potential to deliver, but it's going to take a little bit longer. I think we'll see a lot more entrants as well. It's almost daily that there's a new entrant into the market. So I think the market is going to become definitely more kind of busy over the next 12 months. I think that will change on that 5-year horizon. So there was some research that came out of BCG Group that said actually brands really want to work with 6 retail media networks. That's probably the limit where actually from a resource perspective, it starts to become more difficult. And that's why I say over a 5-year horizon, I think we'll start to see some of that consolidation. I think there'll be 1, 2, maybe 3 players in each of the market, and everything else will kind of change in its execution of where it is today. So that's probably my 5-year hypothesis. Okay. And then I think when we look at the US have been really good from a digital perspective, a little bit different from an in-store point of view. We know that they're looking to us in the UK for that inspiration there because we've always been really strong in that market. I think we'll probably start to see a bit of leveling out actually between the UK and the US, and in terms of the pedestal that each country is kept on from a retail media perspective.
Okay. You mentioned brands want to work with about 6 retail media networks. How many are there now? 60, 100? Like
200, I think. 200,
yeah. Right. So does that mean that there's a need for some sort of unifying technology, which will, as you mentioned, programmatic, like maybe some sort of retail media specific DSP that all of the retail media networks plug into, and then you can deal with many more than 6? Because 6 seems quite limiting. I mean, you can hit big numbers with 6. Obviously, you can hit huge numbers, but you kind of want to reach all of your category buyers wherever they are, right? And like, if they're not in the 6, do you think that will ever happen, or do you think that the individual owners of the data will want to keep that separate and have their own sort of, as we said, walled garden to a certain extent at the beginning? It's
definitely been my hypothesis, probably for around the last 3 years, that will come along, and I wish I had the funding and the time to build it myself, but I don't. Yeah. So I think so. I think the barrier will be the fact that retailers, let's be honest, grocery is a very narrow profit margin. Retail media is a substantial additive to that. And therefore, a lot of retailers are building up their own teams. They're going to want to keep hold of their data. Some of the conversations that we've kind of had when we've been thrashing this around internally is that if you were to go down that route, given particularly in the UK, there's such an overlap in terms of customer shopping behaviours. For example, I only shop at Sainsbury's, but I can imagine you probably do a big shop at a Sainsbury's or a Tesco. You probably do a convenience shop, maybe at a Waitrose on the way home. You then may, do a top-up shop at, I don't know, a Co-op or something like that. You're shopping across multiple different retailers. So in that environment where you've got loyalty cards across all of them, who gets the money for the sale and the media revenue?
It's a bit like
right?
last click attribution in digital, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the bit that for me, I can't quite get my head around how that would work.
But so if we had a DSP that all of the networks were in, that would be another good reason to do that, right? So because if you activated in Sainsbury's in store, in aisle, but then you saw sales going up in Co-op, brand would be right with that. You not so right with that because you're like, we wanted the attribution, but brands would be like, this is really interesting because when we activate in Sainsbury's, so we see sales go up sort of in other places. So I think Dean talks about that convenience. He says the other way around. He says like quite often people might see something in a Co-op and go and buy it in a Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
But maybe having that one platform that kind of would make sense. So last question, fun one, from a personal point of view, is there like a hero brand that you think is absolutely nailed on, perfect to work with Nectar 360 and Sainsbury's, but you've never got to do it yet?
I'm really lucky. I work across both Sainsbury's and Argos, so we work with about 900 brands and many iconic brands within that portfolio. So it's really difficult for me. We ran an amazing campaign, again, with Coke a couple of years ago for the purple Coke can, where there was a limited edition of hand-painted cans. Now, that for me was the perfect fusion of retail media and brand, right? So bringing the power of the Coca-Cola brand, the power of the Nectar brand together, really inspiring customers to come in and purchase, and amazing results off the back of it. So that's one that we've already done. So there's probably not one that stands out immediate to me. My personal one, I'm a massive fan of Monzo. I love what they do. I love their creative advertising. I'd love to have a purple Monzo card just in my wallet. So Monzo, if you can make that happen, let me know. But that's probably the one for me that actually I would love to see kind of some cool tie-up with a brand like that. And just, the interesting stuff that they do. And obviously they have a massive customer lens as well around how do you debunk banking, make it fun, make it easy, which I think sits really nicely with what we do from a customer data perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good things come to those that wait. We waited a year for this. So I've really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. Much appreciated, Alice.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.